The first one is about Russell and Kimi Antonelli clash at the Canadian GP sprint race. The Turn 1 scuffle between Mercedes' two drivers in the Montreal sprint prompted Antonelli to feel aggrieved, but was his annoyance justified? The Turn 1 scuffle between Mercedes' two drivers in the Montreal sprint prompted Antonelli to feel aggrieved, but was his annoyance justified? Russell maintained position on the inside of Turn 1, with Antonelli attempting to make a move around the outside. However, the Italian found his car in a rapidly closing gap and was forced to take to the grass to avoid contact. However, Antonelli's stance was evident over the radio. He felt that he had his wheels sufficiently alongside Russell's car to be granted room for the inside of Turn 2 in deference to F1's driving standards guidelines. Was he right to be aggrieved? Let's take a look at those guidelines and see whether Antonelli's point of view is justified. Overtaking on the inside of a corner to be entitled to be given room when overtaking on the inside, the overtaking car must I have its front axle at least alongside the mirror of the other car prior to and at the apex A. Be driven in a fully controlled manner, particularly from entry to apex, and not have dived in. T. In the steward's estimation, have taken a reasonable racing line and been able to complete the move whilst remaining within track limits. Antonelli stated that he had his front axle in a reasonable position alongside Russell, and his argument over the radio hinged on this, but in the first instance into Turn 1, he must refer to the guidelines that cover outside moves. Overtaking on the outside will always be viewed as a more difficult maneuver to accomplish. To be entitled to be given room, including at the exit, when overtaking on the outside, the overtaking car must RI have its front axle ahead of the front axle of the other car at the apex, be driven in a controlled manner from entry to apex and to exit, be able to make the corner within track limits. Antonelli was alongside Russell on the approach, and the two appeared to be level at the apex, but the stewards may well feel that Antonelli's axle was crucially not ahead for anything beyond a split second. GPS data then shows that Russell lifts off slightly to maintain some of the momentum to ensure his front axle remains ahead into the corner. With Turn 1 and 2 in such close proximity, Antonelli may well argue that he was attempting to prise open an overtake into Turn 2, in which the inside line rules would apply. In that case, his axle was beyond the mirror. Yet he was already off the circuit at this point before the change in steering direction. Regardless, this has already been covered in the following part of the guidelines, which states, the above guides for inside and outside may apply for each element of the combination. Generally, priority will be given to the first corner element. While Antonelli may have a case if the inside line guidelines applied, the difference in guidelines for an outside pass thus changes the picture, even in the event of an S-bend. It depends how much weight the stewards place on Antonelli being marginally ahead at the apex for a fraction of a second, and whether this was indeed measurable in the moment. Now let's go for the second one, which is about how Mercedes team boss has defended Kimi Antonelli's fury after his clash with George Russell. Toto Wolff stepped in to put a positive gloss on a sprint race in which Mercedes teammates Antonelli and George Russell clashed while battling for the lead. The Formula One sprint in Canada began aggressively enough, as pole sitter George Russell pulled up on the grid with his Mercedes angled aggressively to cut off any challenge from teammate Kimi Antonelli at launch. But this was nothing compared with the events of lap 6 when Antonelli tried to pass around the outside into Turn 1, only to be given no room at all, and indeed a tap of wheel-to-wheel contact. That sent Antonelli into the runoff area, and then, as he lined up to try another pass into Turn 8 later in the lap, he ran over the grass, enabling Lando Norris's McLaren to slip by into second place. Antonelli complained repeatedly over the radio about Russell's driving etiquette, warranting not just an instruction from race engineer Peter Bonington to focus on the race, but also 2 interventions from team principal Toto Wolff. It's not unknown for Wolff to take to the airwaves to either throw an arm around a driver's shoulder or read the riot act, but seldom does he do it twice. In this case, the very emphatic message was that matters such as these are not to be discussed over the radio. Afterwards, Wolff was keen to frame the race positively as a learning experience for both drivers as they battle for a world championship for the first time. He has been in this scenario before, mediating between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg during their ultimately toxic rivalry as teammates between 2013 and 2016. It was good, Wolff said after the race. Good cinema, and the race was good as well. For us, actually, a very good learning experience about how we want to do things or also how we don't want to do them. You can see how quickly you give away an advantage when you simply fight each other too hard. And there are always 2 people involved. So now we'll discuss it. What can we learn from it? What conclusions can we draw so that in the future we simply avoid these situations? If it's not George but another driver, then you also wouldn't expect him to drive alongside you there and invite you through. And I think that's the consequence. Teammates can overtake each other in moments like these, but probably defending that hard the way it happens when it's about the championship, you can't expect someone to just open the door anymore. On the radio, Antonelli had complained not only that Russell had pushed him off, but that his mirror was alongside. This is a reference to the FIA's much-discussed Driving Standards Guidelines document, which describes the circumstances in which drivers are entitled to racing room when attempting to overtake. Actually, though, the guidelines differ for attempted passes on the inside and outside lines. When trying to overtake on the outside, the attacking driver's front axle has to be beyond the front axle of the car they are trying to pass at the apex, rather than alongside the mirror. This, of course, will form part of that internal discussion Wolff will have to mediate once his drivers calm down. But he remained outwardly supportive of Antonelli's emotional reaction to the battle as a championship contender. "You can't expect to have a lion in the car and a puppy outside of it," Wolff said. And now I'm going to talk about other news like Kimi Antonelli's Canada radio outburst. Ralf Schumacher believes Kimi Antonelli's radio outburst went too far, but says that attitude is part of what could make him a world champion. Former Formula One driver and Sky Sports Germany analyst Ralf Schumacher has branded Kimi Antonelli's Canadian Grand Prix sprint race radio outburst as one step too far, but insists that such fiery behavior is essential for a future world champion. Antonelli argued that his Mercedes teammate George Russell had forced him off the track as the Italian attempted an overtake around the outside on lap 6. The 19-year-old, who became the youngest driver to lead the championship after the Japanese Grand Prix, fumed over the team radio. "That was very naughty," he said before adding, "He pushed me off." Mercedes team chief Toto Wolff warned Antonelli at the time, "Kimi, concentrate on the driving please, not on the radio moaning." After crossing the line in third, Antonelli added over the team radio, "If we need to race like this, that's good to know." Wolff responded once again, saying firmly, "Kimi, now is not the time to talk about this. We talk about this internally and not on the radio, okay?" While speaking on Sky Sports Germany after the sprint race, Schumacher explained that Wolff would want to sort the situation out quickly. Usually these things are discussed very, very quickly. "It's always nice when two teammates argue, that's what people want to see," the former driver said, at least from the outside. But sure, I think they're handling it quite well, and I believe Toto Wolff will sort it out internally afterwards. I'm pretty sure of that. And Kimi now needs to calm down a bit and really look at it properly. He added on Antonelli getting his elbows out. "Yes, definitely. That has to be the case. To become world champion, you have to want that and be capable of it. And you also have to do things like that radio message. Sure, that naturally hints at the stewards looking into it and so on. That's part of the game, even if I sometimes find it strange. But I think he's doing it with the right balance, especially when you consider how young he still is. Sometimes his teammate George Russell is much, much louder. While he backed the Italian driver's approach, Schumacher felt that the radio messages were one step too far. Yes, it was one step too far, but he's young and fearless. I mean, young people do things differently. He's still very, very young. The emotions come through. Italian as well. Not that I say the wrong thing again and get into trouble, but that's just how it is, and the emotion is there in both directions. So all good. And I think tonight the two of them will give each other a quick hug, and then it'll be fine. And the last news, now I'm going to talk about how Kimi Antonelli demanded clarity over robust George Russell defense in Canada F1 sprint. The Mercedes pair clashed in the Canadian GP sprint, which ultimately lost second place for the young Italian. Mercedes' Kimi Antonelli wants his team to provide further clarity over its rules of engagement after a tense battle with George Russell in the Canadian Grand Prix sprint left him upset at his teammate. Starting from the front row, Pullman Russell and second-placed Antonelli fought out a close battle in the opening stages of the 23-lap sprint when the pair came to blows at Montreal's awkward Turn 1-2 chicane. Antonelli attempted a pass around the outside of Turn 1 as it would yield the inside for Turn 2, but had to escape onto the grass after Russell refused to yield ground on exit. The battle then resumed in Turn 8, with Antonelli sailing off the track and ending up behind Lando Norris in third. In the heat of the moment, the incident angered Antonelli as the Italian called for a naughty Russell to receive a penalty for pushing him off the track. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff had to intervene twice on the team radio to urge Antonelli to stop venting his frustration in public. Speaking after the race, Antonelli said Russell's robust defense was not how he had understood Mercedes' internal rules on engagement, and he urged the Brackley team to provide more clarity. "Obviously, we do meetings before races, and that's what we say in the room," Antonelli said. "Then, of course, we race to win, and we try to do our best to defend our position. Probably I understood the significance of that meeting a bit differently. Emotions were very high in the moment, and obviously I was very annoyed. But I just need to recheck, and for sure we're going to talk about it, and we're going to clarify that." When quizzed further by motorsport.com if it meant Antonelli would change his approach to racing Russell if the Briton's defense was within bounds, he replied, "For sure. I think we probably just need a bit of clarity. And then once it's clear, then it's all going to be fine, I think. Definitely, I need to probably ask again. The main thing for the team is that there's no contact, that we don't crash into each other, which today at the end was very close." Having seen Antonelli win the last 3 Grands Prix from pole to establish a championship lead, Russell insisted he didn't race his teammate any differently and felt the 19-year-old's move around the outside was ambitious to begin with. "It was just a good hard battle, and obviously I defended into Turn 1 and you never get overtaken around the outside of that corner, so I knew it was kind of pretty safe," he said. but kudos to Kimi for giving it a go, and I respect that, and obviously we came out unscathed. From my side, I didn't think I did anything wrong, and I wasn't investigated. So, I guess race directors and stewards thought the same, but I need to check it, and it is clear that between teammates, we race hard and fair and no contact, and that's always the objective. I wasn't racing Kimi any harder than I would have raced Lando in the same position. And the last news, now I'm going to talk about Martin Brundle's verdict on tense George Russell and Kimi Antonelli Canadian GP sprint battle. Martin Brundle defended George Russell after his Canadian Grand Prix sprint clash with Kimi Antonelli. Sky Sports Formula One analyst Martin Brundle has explained why he wouldn't give George Russell a penalty after the dramatic Mercedes intra-team battle during the Canadian Grand Prix sprint race. Russell secured a hard-fought victory in the Montreal sprint, but the main talking point after the race was his tense battle with his teammate Kimi Antonelli. The Italian driver was left fuming on the team radio after he attempted an overtake on Russell on lap 6 in an ambitious move around the outside of turn 1. As the pair went round the corner, Russell struck the inside curb, causing his car to bounce wide and squeeze Antonelli. The moment saw Antonelli go off the circuit and across the grass, which resulted in McLaren's Lando Norris taking second position. Antonelli maintained after the race that he was pushed off, arguing, I tried to make my move, but I need to review that because I was well alongside and got pushed off. It is what it is. The 19-year-old was warned multiple times by the Brackley outfit to save his complaints for a private conversation. Kimi, concentrate on the driving, please, not on the radio moaning, Team Chief Toto Wolff told Antonelli. After taking the checkered flag, Antonelli fumed once again. If we need to race like this, that's good to know. Kimi, now is not the time to talk about this. We talk about this internally and not on the radio, okay? Wolff responded. Brundle analyzed Wolff's place in this. It is interesting the headmaster Toto Wolff has had to step in there and say stop this. Watching frame by frame, I can now see why Antonelli felt he was entitled to more racing room. After watching replays of the moment, Brundle shared his analysis on Sky Sports F1. You can see that George Russell's car hits the inside curb and bounces to the right-hand side. The problem with writing regulations is that it is difficult to cover everything on different tracks. Something that was added this year is that the driver on the inside can't just disappear or suddenly change by 30 or 40 degrees. I think if you stick your car to the outside like that, you have to expect to be squeezed. That is the racing view. I wouldn't give George Russell a penalty. And finally, we're going to talk about the Lewis Hamilton's future at Ferrari. The 7-time champion confirms he has a contract for 2027 to stay with the Maranello team. Lewis Hamilton is not entertaining thoughts of retirement from Formula One, refuting suggestions by those trying to retire me that he should call time on his illustrious career. Hamilton stated that he planned to stay in F1 for quite some time with the intent to remain at Ferrari for the next few years. Hamilton signed a multi-year deal on joining the Maranello squad, understood to be for 3 years. This would bring him to the end of 2027 on his current contract. After a tough 2025 in which Hamilton struggled to adapt to Ferrari, the 7-time champion has enjoyed a brighter start to this season following changes to his side of the garage. Former race engineer Riccardo Adami stepped aside, and Hamilton is currently engineered by Carlos Santi on an interim basis. Speaking about his future, Hamilton confirmed that he was still in contract with Ferrari for 2027 and stated that he was still motivated to compete in F1. Assuming a 3-year deal, Hamilton will be 42 by the end of his contract. Yep, I'm still in contract. So everything's 100% clear to me. And yeah, I'm still focused. I'm still motivated, Hamilton stated. I still love what I do with all my heart, and I'm going to be here for quite some time, so get used to it. There's a lot of people that are trying to retire me, and that's not even on my thoughts. I'm already thinking of what will be next. I'm planning for the next 5 years. But yeah, I still plan to be here for some time. Various pundits had called for Hamilton to consider hanging up his helmet in recent weeks. Ex-F1 driver Ralf Schumacher, now a pundit for Sky Sports Germany, suggested that both Hamilton and the 44-year-old Fernando Alonso should give young people a chance rather than continue in F1. Hamilton's seat has been linked to Haas's Oliver Behrman, a product of Ferrari's driver academy, but he looks set to wait at least another year before entering the frame for a Ferrari drive. Although simulators have formed an increasingly vital part of the driver's preparation for a race weekend, Hamilton is known not to be a huge fan. Indeed, he did not use the Ferrari simulator in its Maranello base ahead of the Montreal weekend. Instead, he chose to focus on working with his engineers and assessing the data from the opening 4 rounds in an effort to work on optimizing the balance of his Ferrari SF26, particularly under braking. He said that this decision had its roots in his more frequent use of Ferrari's simulator last year, which he felt could often provide a distorted picture of the conditions he faced at each of the race weekends. That's all for now. I hope you liked this video. If so, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe. Have a good day. Best regards. Until the next video.